Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. I hope everybody is fine in your house and you're having a good time, or as good as you can, in this whole self-quarantine thing that we're doing. So yeah, if you were in the last video, if you were watching, sorry about that. I was trying out a new web camera and that didn't work very well. So I'm back to my old setup. Hopefully this works for you. The lighting seems pretty good so far. So yeah, sorry about that last one. So today I want to talk about the rising price of food, and I'm going to go through kind of what we see right now, signs that it's going to be going up, and what we see in the news, and then what we want to do about it, if anything. And I do have some ideas and some things I want to share with you as far as what you should be expecting. And none of these are a huge surprise, but I just don't think people are thinking about it right now, and I think we really should be planning for the future. So let's look at the numbers. So today we are at over 4 million infected, according to the Johns Hopkins map, and that's kind of what I go by. I refresh it every day, and we're at 282,000 deaths. And so most of those right now are reported in the U.S. And of course, you know, these are all kind of weird numbers. They're, you know, we don't know how accurate they are. The U.S. has been doing a lot of testing. I live in Canada. I don't think we do much testing up here at all. Which is unfortunate, but so of course we're not even on the map. But you know, don't look in, then you won't see the problem, right? So that always works. So anyway, that's what's going on in the numbers, and then of course there's lots of stuff in the news. Trump's getting criticized quite a bit yeah, about how he's handling this. Yeah, and of course you know, it's not going that great. But you know, on the other hand, how do you really prepare for this, right? I think I would probably be more critical of some of the authorities like the CDC and the WHO. But, you know, I think there's criticism for everybody, but I won't get into that this video for once, right? Let's focus on the topic. So it's signs of a food shortage. And so what do we see out there? So I was reading the New York Times, and I thought this quote was really interesting. The world has never faced a hunger emergency like this. So, you know, and that would be counting all the world wars. That would be counting all the different diseases that we've had. So we've never had a hunger emergency like this, experts say. It could double the number of people facing acute hunger to 265 million by the end of the year. So within 2020. Now that's pretty amazing in and of itself, right? What that means is to levels we've never seen before. And I have the news streaming on multiple channels on some of my monitors here throughout the day, and I see the rioting that's already going on in some third world countries, and what's going on even right now, and we're still at the beginning of it. So imagine what that's going to be like in a month, in 2 months, in 6 months, right? It's not going to be good. The other things that we see is rationing at retailers, and this is more, you know, in our neighborhood. You go to like Costco and other grocery chains like Kroger and Wegmans. Is that how you say it? Wegmans? That's such a weird name. Who would call their company Wegmans, right? When they're thinking about ideas, well, it must be someone's last name. So if that's your last name, I'm sorry, but you know, and I can't tease people for their last names because mine's funny as well. But Wegmans, that's a weird name for a grocery store chain. But anyway, so they're enacted purchasing limits to stop customers from panic buying, which is probably a good idea. They're not calling it rationing. Rationing would be, okay, we've got a shortage and we can only give you so many. What they're doing is purchasing limits to stop panic buying. But why would you stop panic buying, right? Isn't it a free market? Shouldn't you be able to buy as much as you want, provided you can pay for it? So I think that there's obviously a supply problem. They can't replenish fast enough. And there's definitely a problem with the seniors in our communities needing to get things like toilet paper and essential items and not be able to get them because the fast people get in there and buy everything. And then there's nothing left for the slower moving seniors, which is terrible. And we definitely want to fix that problem. And I think that they should keep some available or have special hours, which they've started doing for seniors, and really assist those people that have special needs and things like that in our community that are going to have a lot of hard times as we progress through this. They're the ones that really need the help. For people like myself and for many of you, you know, I only need so many rolls of toilet paper per week, and I'm fine with that sort of rationing or what they call purchasing limits. That's fine. And I think that some things like toilet paper, it's irrational, quite ridiculous. But we may, and I don't think we'll see a supply chain issue there. But on meat products, definitely we will, and we are. So another example would be fast food. So fast food chains like Wendy's has sold out of meat in about 1 out of every 5 stores. So that's bad for them, right? I mean, I guess they're going to be selling fries and Cokes, right, and pop drinks, because that seems pretty ridiculous and terrible for their store. And it makes you kind of wonder where they're getting their meat from if they're not able to replenish like that, right? And I guarantee you, it's bottom dollar meat that you're getting in your burger there. And I had one about a year ago, and oh man, I almost threw up. But sorry, if Wendy's is your favorite, I think you get used to it, like everything, and then if you stop eating it and then go back, it's you notice that it's not that great. So then, of course, we saw government action. The White House invoked the Defense Production Act, which was really interesting. This is really to ensure that there's the availability of meat during this crisis. So what we saw was processing facilities have begun to have outbreak clusters that led to closures. And that's bad, because if you close those processing plants, you're going to have major issues, because you still have the supply, but you're just not able to process it. And so Trump recently signed the executive order that mandates these kind of plants remain open to avoid these major ruptures in the food supply. And it shows you how fragile our food supply is, right? Because we only have a few companies that own all of those processing plants. And we've really consolidated a lot over the recent years. And so that's there's some real risk there, right, that we're really starting to see. It'll be interesting to see if we actually go back and fix any of those issues once we get out of this. And I don't think we will. I don't think we're smart enough to go back and do that, or coordinated enough to be able to do that. So in the news on April 28th, the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, UFCW, America's largest meatpacking union, said that 20 of its workers had died from COVID-19, and that 5,000 workers were either hospitalized or showing symptoms. So that's bad. So whenever we have union involvement with these things, they can just close stuff down very easily. And so that led to closures, of course, during the pandemic. 25% reduction in pork slaughter capacity and 10% reduction in beef slaughter capacity. So, greatly reduced. Well, 10% is not greatly, but I think it's gone down even more since then. That was a few weeks ago, right? So how does this compare to Europe? That was a really interesting thing that I was reading about. So in the U.S., it's highly consolidated for beef production, especially, whereas not so much in Europe and the U.K. For example, 3 companies account for 2/3 of the market in the U.S. And this consolidation takes place at the factory level. So closing one processing plant can really have a big impact, right? And that can actually process 10 million beef servings in a single day, according to the White House fact sheet. So that's amazing, right? They're just going through a lot of it. So when we look at this, there was a guy, Christopher Leonard, author of The Meat Racket. He was talking to Bloomberg. He said this is 100% a symptom of the consolidation that I was just talking about. And this is the quote of the day. And this is something that if you remember nothing else from this video, this is something to remember. We don't have a crisis of supply right now. So lots of supply, lots of cows, lots of meat. We have a crisis in processing. So that's due to that consolidation of processing plants owned by same companies, run by unions. And when they start shutting down, that's going to ripple through and be mandated throughout that company. And we're going to see dramatic reductions in supply. So that's why we have slower restocking in stores. That's why you can't find your favorite meats because of that, right? And that's really bad. So we've got lots of cows out there that if you could go buy, and you can actually, but not the way that we historically have, you could get some meat. So as a result, what's happened was, as we see that stores are not restocking very quickly, consumers go into this panic buying frenzy. And that's what we see. They see as soon as it shows up, they buy it. And that makes sense, right? I did the same thing. When I see meat, I buy it. I put it in my freezer, and it stays there till I need it, because I know that if I go to the store, it may not be there. And I think that it's probably going to get worse over time. So that's really interesting. And then the other thing that we also see as far as the logistics of meat supply and food supply in general is restaurants no longer buy, which is causing all this slack in the system. And the longer that goes, the more chance you have of the collapse of the logistics, right? And the shipping lanes, of the containers, of the trucking, all those things, right? Because if you're a trucker, let's say, just for example, and you're not able to ship stuff, you're not able to send it to the restaurants, or you're a company, let's say, like Cisco, that that caters to those restaurants, you're going to have to change your business plan really quick. Or you might just get out of that business and move to something else if you're an individual doing that. And once that happens, how do you go back? How do you start that up again, right? It's really difficult to get that moving again. So we see that now with the supplies that used to go to restaurants, that now goes to private consumers and other destinations. So the food is still there. It's got to go somewhere. So it's either going to rot in some warehouse somewhere, or you got to sell it to somebody else. And then once restaurants want it again, I mean, it'll work, but I see some issues there that are going to have to get fixed. So there's also been some meat processing plants in the U.S. that have just been forced to close, shut down. Will they start up again? Hard to tell, right? So I think some will, but it's going to cause some more delays, some more slack in the system. And as a result, we're going to see higher prices across the board. We already do. So right now, it's not unusual to pay double the amount for, say, eggs and things like that. Well, how much would you pay for eggs? Right? Would you pay 10 times the amount that you used to pay 6 months ago? I've been kind of wondering how much it's going to go up. And 10 times as much, to me, seems reasonable if there's not that many out there. I mean, it'll just keep going up until people stop buying. And I think some people will pay more than others. So the United Nations is saying that 265 million worldwide could suffer from food shortages at the end of the year, especially in the slums. And that's what we're seeing on the news right now. And that's the same as what the New York Times said, right? I think that's the same number. Is it the same number? Yeah, so same number. So everybody's throwing that number around. But I think that's a lot of people. And most of those people are in third world countries. And so you can say, well, it's not me. Yeah, it's not you yet. But it is going to impact you no matter where you live, whether you be in the slums. I mean, the slums are going to be terrible. But if you're just, in a first world country, and you want to go buy some cheese or some milk or some eggs or some meat, well, you're going to have a problem, I think. And you're going to have to figure out some alternatives. And I've made other videos that go through in more detail some of those alternatives as well. But this is what I think is going to happen. The prices will slowly rise, and it'll just keep going up for fresh food over this year. And probably in the next year, we'll just see those prices go up and up and up. And it'll be this bubble. And it'll just keep going up, because food supply is not going to get better. It's going to get worse, I would think, right? Because right now we're at the very beginning. We're seeing that migrant workers are not going to the farms because our governments are giving them more money to stay home, which I have no idea why we're doing that in Canada. So it's one of the dumbest things I've seen. You don't want to give too much money. You want to give enough money for people to survive. But if you give them more money than what they're making, they're not going to go to work. Why would they, right? Just stay home and play Nintendo. So I have no idea why we're doing that. But so that's what's going to happen there. Those who can afford to buy the fresh food, like the fresh meat, the fresh eggs, the fresh milk, they'll keep buying it, right? And it'll just keep going up until we reach a point where supply matches demand. And that's how it'll be. So 10 times as much, not out of the realm of possibility, in my opinion. I think that when people want some eggs, they want to pay $50 for 12 eggs, some people will, right? And I don't think I think a lot of people will. They won't eat as many because there won't be as many to eat, but people will crave those certain things that they're very accustomed to. People don't like to change, and that will drive it up. So some people just won't be able to pay $50 for 12 eggs, and so you won't have those. It's simple as that. Those who can afford it will buy it, and those that can't are going to have to find other less healthy alternatives. And this is where it gets tricky, right? Is because if you can't afford it, it's because you don't have that much money, as much money as somebody else who can afford it. And what that means is you're going to have to buy something that's less healthy. That means you're going to have to buy processed food, canned food, food that lasts for years. That kind of food is not very good. That's very salty, lots of preservatives, right? A bag of potato chips is not that good for you, right? So that means more people are going to be eating that crap, right? And because they can, because that's all you can afford. And as a result, we're going to see more health issues. So if you look 5 years down the road, and in this first year, food prices keep going up. People stop buying the healthy food that they're been trying to buy to stay healthy. They get off the carrots, they get off the apples, they get off the oranges, they get off the fresh meat. They start buying potato chips and canned tuna and stuff like that. I mean, canned tuna is not that bad in small quantities, but depending on what kind of ones you buy. But still, we're going to see more cheap crap, right? That we've been trying to get away from, and more of the processed foods. So you're going to have an increase over time, over the next few years, of diabetes, of heart disease, of all the things that we've been trying to fix through diet and exercise. And it's very easy for people to fall back into the ways of buying junk, right? And that's what we'll see. And then they'll feed their families that because that's the only thing they can do. And it's not necessarily all their fault, because if that's all you can afford, that's all you can afford. And it's much easier to buy bigger volumes of cheap, unhealthy crap because it's a lot cheaper than to buy one apple or something like that. You can't feed your family with one apple, right? What I would encourage people to do is seek out alternatives, like going direct to the farm, having your own little farm, trying to grow your own food as much as possible. Do bulk things like potatoes and rice and flour. Even if you bake your own food, it's going to have less, or bread, it's going to have less preservatives in it than if you buy it at the store. And it's also going to be cheaper, allowing you to buy more quality food. So that's what I think is going to happen over time. Food prices are just going to continue to go up. And I think that's going to happen not just till the end of this year. I think we're going to go through a couple growing seasons where we face that problem. And I think that it wouldn't be, I would think at least till the end of 2020, and I would think into 2021, prices for food will continue to be high. And once people are accustomed to the high prices of food, it's not like this gradual increase that we see with some things. No, it's going to go up quick. And then I don't think it's going to fall down quick, right? I think that it will stay higher than it ever was, which is going to really hurt a lot of people as well. And it's going to reduce the overall standard of living for people. And once people establish the habits as well of buying crap food, those habits are hard to break as well. And so something to think about. And I think if you go into that with a conscious mind of this is what's going on and trying to fight against it and trying to live as healthy as you can, I think that's probably the best thing we can do. But that's what I anticipate is going to happen. And so far, I've been pretty right about a lot of these things. So I think that I'm probably not far off there either. So if you can stock up on some things, flour, rice, those sort of things, start your own garden. My little garden out there is going not too bad right now. But I think if you want the fresh tomatoes and you don't want to pay a fortune for them, if you want some eggs, maybe get to know your farmers. And I think farmers are suffering a little bit from what I've seen, depending on what part of the world you're in. So if you're able to support your farmers, I think that's a great idea. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and stay safe. All right. See you later.